Something that I've always heard you say, and I've read it in quite a few of the things that you've written, is
Yes.
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
Expand a little bit more on that.
Yeah, well, I think in any market, whether it's in the market or in investing or anything like that, there's a good side, there's a bad side, and there's an ugly side. So and the ugly side, I think, is the reality what happens out there in the world out there. And we can't get away from global financial crisis or whatever that's happening out there. We are faced. Life hits us in the face every single day.
And it affects us.
It does. It certainly does. But it's very important in terms of how we respond to that. And so the bad is what our reaction is to that, whether it's good or bad. And I think that it's very important that we don't react to things that come our way. And I think that the more we get to understand it and we respond to it in a responsible way, we find that there's a solution to absolutely everything. It doesn't matter what your situation is. And we teach people that that whole mindset thing. I call it you got your inner world, which is in your mind, and then you've got your outer world, because investing is very much a psychological thing. I've met some of the wealthiest investors in the world, and when I start speaking to them, they start talking about the psychology of wealth. And it comes down to, I would say, 80% of investing has got to do with psychology and only 20% of mechanics. So what happens is everybody starts focusing on the how-tos, on the mechanics of how to investing, in fact, when they should be working on the mindset of themselves and looking at ways and means and creating their own ways and means of and their own world for investing. And it comes from reading books, accessing positive stuff. And if you access enough daily news, it could really slant you to become very negative.
Yeah.
So you've got to control the messages that are coming in every day, and it's really got to do with that.
Looking at the prospects for property, what do you envisage in terms of interest rate hikes for ordinary consumers out there for the residential properties and commercial properties?
Well, I can assure you that the interest rates will rise. And, we always look at reasons, are there sound reasons? And I can't seem to find them, It's
but
very
they
difficult.
will rise.
But the economists, they always have justifications of how they, why they will rise. And obviously, it's got to do with, the flow of money in and out the country. South Africa has now become a culture of consumers, and, our manufacturing has dropped off majorly. So therefore, the balance of payments where we import and export stuff has become a big player in terms of how interest rates affect our consumer markets as well. So that's why I think interest rates will continue. If you look at historically, our interest rates are at historical lows. However, they're not going to rise as in big increments as they did before. I don't foresee that. It'll be like 0.25% here, 0.5% there, but they definitely
So they
will
could
rise.
add up in the next 2 to 3 years.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you've got to look at what's going to happen in the US, because the US markets also and the UK markets at historical lows. So now we've got to say, well, what effect once interest rates rise there? What effect is that going to have on the market? So any little global sort of effect around the world, could have an impact on right here in South Africa.
So it is actually very naive to think that we are cloistered in South Africa and we're living in a bubble,
Definitely
and whatever
not.
happens in the outside world doesn't affect us.
Absolutely. So, and it's all about being prepared for that. So, I know a lot of successful property and real estate companies right here in South Africa who invested offshore very successfully, simply because they actually foresaw the market where it is today and where it was going to be. And all they did was a lot of them moved assets offshore. They did just realign their strategies. So a lot of them have got plans now. What's going to happen today? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next week, next month, next year, and for the next couple of years? And it's all got to do with that forward planning going forward.
So it's becoming knowledgeable about
Absolutely.
your personal finance, becoming knowledgeable about your property portfolio, becoming knowledgeable about what's happening internally, externally, so that you can once again just be able to make the best financial decisions.
Absolutely. Once you understand the flow of money, and more importantly, the interest, the interest that you pay on loans. I mean, we saw the collapse of African Bank. And the interest that many of those people were paying on those loans was like astronomical. We're talking around about the 30% plus mark.
But do you also not find that people are these days just so happy to have the access to the loan that it doesn't matter what interest rate it is, we'll sign on the dotted line just give us the money because that's what we need right now.
Oh, well, it's a double-edged sword. You know, I think on the one end, the banks are also just saying, yes, take it. You know, there's a lot of this unsecured loans and what they call, you know, securitized and unsecured loan. And I still say there's not much difference between the two. Whether there's a house behind it, all it means is the bank has got an asset that they can foreclose on or they can repossess. That's all it means. You're still wrapped up in that loan as an individual, and it's your ability to pay that loan back. Plus, okay, the securitized loan just means that they've got a house on top of that as well. So in other words, they can sell that asset and they can, you know, get that money back again. In addition to that, they also want the shortfall of that loan as well, which is virtually impossible if somebody's been taken out to actually repay. But they do insist on that.
Thank you, Neale. It was great having you in the studio again, and we'll have Neale back soon to discuss some more property issues.
Great stuff. Thank you, Ms. Rika.